Well, I am an activist from Canada, and I have gone to jail 23 times, but I've been arrested 28 times and tried to get arrested about 52 times, I believe, of the last 25 years in order to try and legalize cannabis in both the United States and Canada. I have spent a 5-year prison sentence very recently in the United States, ostensibly for sending cannabis seeds to American customers, part of my business. But the real reason I was arrested and put in the U.S. prisons, according to the head of the DEA, Karen Tandy, was because of all my legalization activity that proceeded from the sales of these seeds. I gave away $5 million to American, Canadian, and worldwide legalization groups, including even the SSDP at various points in their start. And this agitated and irritated the DEA to the degree that when I was arrested in July 2005, they said Mr. Emery has contributed hundreds of thousands of dollars to legalization groups. These legalization groups now have one less pot of money to get from. And on it went. It was just a big tirade about all my activity in order to further legalization. And they were very upset about it. And they made a very unprecedented move to extradite me to the United States to face a prison sentence there. I'm the only person that's ever gone to prison in Canada or the United States for seed selling, a minor offense at most in Canada and America, and completely legal to sell seeds in Ireland and the rest of Europe. So I've been a civil disobedient since 1998, and I have seen it create great success in Canada to further my goals to legalize marijuana there. And now I'm on a tour of Europe, starting in Ireland and the UK, in order to talk with activists and assess what's going on, and perhaps offer advice and inspiration so that we can accelerate the progress here in the Republic of Ireland as well as the UK, and all of us will see legalization a little earlier, I hope. Well, in the 10 years previous to 2005, I'd been selling seeds aggressively around the world, and the whole idea of selling seeds was not because I'm a botanist or because I have a particular love of seeds, but it was a very expedient method of raising a lot of money in order to give it out to all these young budding legalization groups that were appearing across America, and I would help finance them in most every state. We were suing the federal government of the United States. We were getting ballot initiatives in Washington, D.C., and Colorado, and Arizona, and Alaska. I was subsidizing all sorts of excellent political activity. The Global Marijuana March was sponsored by me to the tune of $35,000 for the first 5 years. We were doing all these things internationally in Canada and the United States with this money, this $5 million, and it drew the attention of U.S. authorities, who began to target me and spent a lot of money and time basically to establish a case that I was sending seeds to American customers. And they were quite obsessed with the fact I was using the money I gained from this to further political activity, and they made that very clear in their public statements.
I was first involved in running for office in 2005 with the British Columbia provincial election and Marc's BC Marijuana Party. I just ran as a name on the ballot at that point, and I was very young, very new, and just there to be an activist. And then in 2008, we had the opportunity to run in a by-election. There were 2 ridings that needed an election, so we both ran as the Marijuana Party candidates. But the general election the next year, in 2009, the BC Green Party decided to connect with us because they supported legalization, and our goal was to get a political party to support our goal of legalization, so I was invited to run as a candidate for them. I did the same with the BC Green Party in 2013, and I was recently asked if I would consider joining the Liberal Party of Canada because some members of a riding wanted me to be their candidate for Vancouver East. And over the last few years, Marc and I watched as the Liberal Party of Canada went from not really having much of a stance on marijuana to being very firm about legalization. And at their convention in 2012, they made legalization official policy. So the offer to run for a party federally that wants to legalize marijuana across Canada, it was a fantastic offer. And I do have a lot of work to do. At this point, I have paperwork filed I'm going to have to go through an interview. I need to sign up members. I need to win the nomination at a vote in the riding at an unknown time. So there's a lot ahead. But for me, the benefit of running for office is getting the message out there. It's not necessarily for me to win. It's for my ideas to win. It's for the other candidates, the other parties to at least have to listen to these ideas. And even my interest in running federally has generated at least 15 national news stories about my intent to run, and simply about how Marc and I, as recognized marijuana activists, are supporting this federal party, whether they like it or not, because we do have a young following across the country, and young people are especially disenfranchised with voting, and the Conservative government has made it very difficult for any other parties to get the support they need. So I'm excited to hopefully be the candidate, but even if I'm not, I'm going to be campaigning for the party when we go on a speaking tour across Canada.
So we have a tour from September 7th, 2015 next year to October 18th, about 30 cities across Canada, and we're going to go and urge our people and young people to go and vote for the Liberal Party of Canada candidate in their area. And it's important to do that, and it's important to even talk it up in the next year, because our people typically don't vote. Pot people question authority, and they're cynical about authority, and they're skeptical about voting and parliaments and politicians, and so they tend to ignore them. And our emphasis is you cannot afford to ignore this election. This election is a referendum on the future of marijuana, on the legalization of marijuana, and if there's one election you need to come to in unity, it's this one. So we do have our work cut out for us, but at least we have a good year. Normally in a parliamentary democracy, elections are called on the spur of the moment. You've got 30, 35 days of campaign, and we wouldn't be able to do that. But they recently, in the past, passed a law setting a fixed election date. And so we know when the election is going to be. It's a year from now, and we've got a year to cross the country and influence the people and get, hopefully, I hope, 3 million voters, all from our culture in Canada, to vote for the Liberal Party and get them a majority government, and then we'll have legalization. And hopefully that political discussion will be buried into the past at that point. Well, they're distinctly different, I would have to say, because what I was doing was very open and transparent. I was saying, Americans, send me your money, and you'll get these seeds, and these will be awesome seeds, and you'll grow great plants. But furthermore, what I'll do with your money is I will reinvest it in the legalization movements in Canada and the United States. So if someone from New York State sent me money for seeds, I would use that money in New York State to advance the cause there. Silk Road wasn't doing anything like that. There was no political activity or political undertone to any of it. It was simply a market for illegal drugs and other activities that are already being done in certain underground channels or underground illegal ways. And it was purely a money-motivated thing. The futility might be, can the authorities stop the sale of drugs throughout the world? No, they can't. Can they stop people from wanting drugs or buying? No, they can't do any of that. So yes, there is a similar aspect of futility, but my purposes were very clear in their political intent. I wasn't selling seeds because I believed in making a lot of money for myself. When I was arrested in 2005, I had $11 in my bank account. I'd already given it all away. Well, I just noticed the rich ironies in it. Personally, I was elated. That was probably the best day in prison for me ever. When next morning I woke up and Colorado had soundly voted to legalize marijuana, and Washington State, the two of them together were far more important than just one or the other. The two combined were great. I felt terrific. Jodie and I actually had a hand in that. Jodie more than me. She actually participated with one of the people who wrote that legislation in Washington State, John McKay. The rich irony comes from the fact that he was my prosecutor in 2005 and was the supervisor for the U.S. government in prosecuting me. After the indictment to me was sworn out and things go on and I get convicted in Washington State, he decides that it's a failed policy, a flawed policy, and he decides that legalization is really the preferable route to go. So Jodie and John McKay, appearing at press conferences both in Washington State and British Columbia, made it clear to everybody that there was changes happening. My prosecutor, the husband of Jodie Emery, who was sent to prison by this man, is now sitting beside her saying we need to legalize marijuana. So I really quite appreciated that irony. I appreciate the fact that, in my opinion, that's repentance. When those who try to persecute us turn around and become one of us, then that's what we are seeking. So I felt no bitterness, no anger. I was totally excited when Colorado and Washington voted for it. I was excited that Jodie and I are on that website for Washington State as being the only civilian endorsers from the activist community, and we're not even American, and yet we're the only activists that they accepted as endorsers on their website. So no, it was a very proud moment. Jodie was wonderful enough to remind people in her interviews that it's Marc's early work that helped make these things possible, and that's probably true. And so all in all, it was a very proud occasion, and it made me feel like my time in prison was actually worthwhile and useful, and that something good had come of it. So, you know, it helped validate the fact that I was in prison, and it made it a lot easier to bear. Well, it's not just Canada. Colorado and Washington voting to legalize set off a political earthquake around the world. Everybody references what goes on in Colorado. Every state in the United States, the other 48 states, have sent representatives to Colorado and Washington to investigate what they're doing. And many of those legislators have gone back to their home state and said, we need a regime like this here. We need to legalize marijuana also. And so you've got people in Pennsylvania and Rhode Island and New York and even Texas introducing these bills in their state houses in order to get legalized marijuana there. And then you've got people from American states also going to Portugal to talk to Dr. João and the people in the Portuguese government about how their system is working, and talking with the president of Uruguay about their plans to sell marijuana for $1 a gram to totally eliminate the black market. And so you've got all this activity going on. Even Canada has a federal marijuana program, medical marijuana program, that's completely broadening its eligibility as to who qualifies, and this is actually a good thing going on. So there's a lot of exciting activity around the world that governments and legislators and politicians and people looking for inspiration now have these examples to go to. And I think we're going to see a rapid change. I think we're going to see this rapid change in Ireland. Even though the people here, the actors, might be skeptical about that, it's happening right now, very quickly. And the fact that Ireland's only started growing its own marijuana in the last 5 or 6 years, the same thing is happening in the UK. And these are all good signs. There's going to be a rapid transition going around the world in regards to legalization. Too much information is available on the internet. We've got examples politically in almost every continent around the world. And the public in the United States and Canada are fully on board for legalization. This is also happening in Europe, and will come to Ireland quite soon. Well, we have 50 clubs now, or over 50 clubs selling marijuana. That's extraordinary. 10 years ago, there were none. And then we had 3 in 2006, and we had maybe 5 or 6 only 5 years ago. Now we have 50. So we see a massive explosion in the kind of availability for cannabis that's available in Vancouver. And now throughout the rest of the country, we have lounges opening up in small towns and small cities. We have clubs opening up to sell marijuana. In Saskatchewan, the very province I was sent to jail for 3 months for passing one joint in 2004, is now hosting a big cannabis cup that goes on for 3 or 4 days and has no interference from police, and has, you know, dozens of growers in attendance and hundreds of people smoking marijuana. So we're seeing a rapid proliferation of marijuana activity, even within Canada, certainly within the United States, and certainly within Europe.
You'll just have to persevere, and you just need to show up. Marc has often said 80% is just showing up. If you're there, you'll be heard. And our enemies, the prohibitionists, people who are against liberty, they show up, they advocate, they take action, they lobby. And even though as marijuana consumers most don't trust authority, we've been oppressed by the man. The government has not been trusted because they've been the oppressors. But the only ones who can relieve us from that oppression are the oppressors. So we have to work with them. And that starts with even just giving them phone calls and going and trying to have meetings with them. I know that there's even a Liberal Party member of Parliament who learned I was going to speak at an event she was meant to speak at, and she pulled out of the event because she didn't want to be associated with me. But in the meantime, other activists who aren't as well known would go to her and give her information, and she came around. So that now she is advocating legalization. And she won't stand beside me and do it, but that's not my goal. My goal is to have others do it as well. So even if you don't actually get in there yourself, even if you aren't the one making the statements to the news, if you can get those ideas into the heads of the politicians. They might not take action right away, but they might come around a little bit later. And of course, politicians are often flocks of sheep. They'll just go wherever they're herded. So if you get the leaders on board, that's really important. But taking action through phone calls, writing letters, calling politicians, joining a political party, be it conservative, liberal, social democrat, whatever parties exist, try and get our message into all of the parties, because ending prohibition is nonpartisan. So we should ask any government to free us from this oppression.